We're off to a good start. Our second discussant is full professor of Old Testament and the environment of the Bible at the University of Fribourg, Switzerland. Please welcome joining us online to talk about theological perspective on ecology and climate change, Professor Father Hans-Ulrich Steymans of the Order of Preachers.
So, welcome. I don't know how I do now show my PowerPoint. Shall I open it myself? Yeah. No, you need to allow me.
You can, I think, start sharing. We tried sharing.
That I can share my PowerPoint, or you show the PowerPoint.
But can you share your copy with us?
You deactivated the authority for me to show a PowerPoint. So
all right,
either you show my PowerPoint or you activate it for me.
Probably we'll try activating it. It's your co-host. Can you try it again?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah, okay. So. Do you see my PowerPoint now?
Yeah, it's visible, Father.
Yeah, you see it. Okay, so fine. So I will tell you a bit, sorry for being late, because we have now 8:18 only in Vienna. So I'm late. Unfortunately, I didn't attend the first lecture, which would have been very interesting for me. So, and I just will tell you a bit about the eco-theology. So giving you a theological background for this endeavor to avoid plastic, for example, or to live a more sustainable life. What is done in the Christian religions? So my paper will be the theological perspective on ecology and climate change. So, wie gehe ich jetzt weiter? Augenblick. So. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So let me first tell you who started with eco-theology. So the people who started with eco-theology in the 60s were the American Lutheran Joseph Sittler, and who was a professor of theology in Chicago. And he raised this issue at the first time on the ecumenical international meeting in Delhi in 1961. There he said for the first time that Christians need to be aware of the damage done to nature. And that raised a shitstorm, because especially the Protestants have a tradition of being against nature. That's coming from this dichotomy of Luther between grace and nature. So nature is normally bad for Protestants, especially the human nature after the collapse of Adam and Eve. So they had, in order to accept a positive outlook to nature and environmental care, they had to change a lot of their theology and their perspective to nature and grace. And another person in the United States who started already in the 60s the awareness of environmental damage was Richard A. Baer, who is a Reformed theologian. So the Reformed people were more inclined to being open to environmental care and to nature, because they have this covenantal theological heritage, where a chain of covenants, starting with God's covenant with Adam, going on to the covenant with Noah, the covenant with Abraham, the covenant with Israel, and then the covenant given by Jesus in the Last Supper. So they have a line of covenants which is going through the Old Testament into the New Testament, and always having the idea of grace. And so this covenantal idea is also open to an awareness of nature. So that's why they are more inclined to doing nature. And so and for example, one Reformed theologian who is also very famous in ecological questions is Jürgen Moltmann, a German theologian who was translated very much into English. And so he is also Reformed. And so Baer, in the fall of 1974, Richard Baer came to Cornell University, and there he started an undergrad course program for environmental ethics. And so there are a number of simple and straightforward themes implicit in the church theological and biblical heritage from this Reformed point of view that would appear to be directly relevant to the current environmental situation. Perhaps the most obvious of these is that the world belongs to God. A second, equally simple point is that God likes what he created, not just part of it, but the world of its totality. My third point, as a Baer's third point, is that creation, as understood in both the biblical foundation and the principles of modern science, involve interrelationship and wholeness, not incidentally, but fundamentally and necessary. Wantonly to disrupt the relational and holistic qualities of our environment is to rebel against the basic structure of the world which God has presented to us. So you see this Reformed approach very much starting at the Bible and then going to results for a change of behavior in regards to the environment. And now, so this was also started in the 60s, and you may ask, what did the Catholic Church do at that time? So at that time, the Catholic Church was still very much pro-technic, progress, because they were still in the Second Vatican Council, and the Second Vatican Council has nothing to say on the environment. So they still were sleeping at that time. And this sleepiness of the Catholic Church may be due to some eco-theologians due to the quarreling in the Renaissance time, where Kepler, where those new ideas about the world, that the Earth is turning around the sun, and so the Church was condemning that. So this process against Galilei. So there was a sort of reluctance in the Catholic Church to address natural topics at all. So it needed a bit of time for the Catholics just to come up to that point. And now, since we have people from Africa, from Nigeria, and people from Asia, from the Philippines, I want to show you or present you some of the most important people in an English-speaking environmental network. And so there are people in South Africa, and one of the most outspoken eco-theologians is also the Reformed professor in South Africa, in Cape Town, Ernst Conradi. And last year, he published an article about the 4 tasks of environmental theology. And there he said that first, environmental theology or eco-theology has a critical task, or 2 critical tasks, namely an ecological critique of Christianity. So why is it also one of the reasons or one of the causes for environmental decline? So this is this famous article and talk by Lynn White Jr., who addressed the anthropocentrism of Christianity as being one of these forgetfulness to environmental care. And the second critical point is a Christian critique of ecological destruction of the environment. So the way how we destruct the environment. The first one would be how the thinking models of Christianity, due to its anthropocentrism, had led to neglecting the environment. And the second one would now be, how do we behave and how could we change that? And then there is the constructive task of eco-theology, namely now to find a constructive contribution to Christian authenticity in caring for the environment, and then to contribute on the basis on the multidisciplinary discourse on ecological issues in the public sphere. And this is a very interesting thing because it takes us into the dialogue with natural sciences, and that is also a very fascinating thing. So now my preview. What I want to do in this 50 minutes that I will still speaking with. So I will ask, which theological disciplines does eco-theology encompass? And there's one background of feminist theology. So that's one of the backgrounds that led or influenced eco-theology. Then what does dogmatics do in eco-theology according to the doctrine of creation and anthropology? Then what do biblical studies do in eco-theology? What do social ethics do? And what can practical theology and liturgy provide for a more awareness to the nature in our Catholic Church? And then I will finish with the ecclesiastical teaching and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences in Rome, which is helping the Pope in doing raising a more ecological awareness in our Catholic Church. So my thesis is that eco-theology rethinks the theological traditions of Christianity against the backdrop of environmental destruction. Climate change is not the main focus of eco-theology, but rather a more comprehensive eco-justice for all living beings on the planet. So eco-justice is one of the main key terms. Also, for example, in Laudato Si, with this integral theology or integral ecology, which encompasses at the same time justice for the poor and awareness or sustainability in regard to the nature. So the feminist theologians who were at the beginning of eco-theological things were Sally McFargill. You have here a bit of her publications, so you can easily Google her and get her books. And the second one is a Catholic theologian, Rosemary Redford Ruther, who was damned or condemned not to teach at a Catholic institution, because at that time, still in the 70s, the Catholic Church was still against such things like eco-theology and feminist theology. So although being a Catholic theologian, she taught at a Protestant institution. And one of her most interesting books is Gaia and God, an ecofeminist theology on healing the earth. Then for Sally McFarger, you see there she has a recent book in 2021 on climate change for Christology. So this special keyword of our conference, of our symposium, climate change, was addressed by her also. Unfortunately, Sally McFarger died. She was a theologian in Vancouver, and she had an article some years ago on Jesus Christ and the climate change, where she says that the Western story, anchored in a monarchical, all-powerful, static God, is no longer functioning to give meaning to people's life, nor to motivate their behavior. So this is one of these approaches of feminist theology to approach that androcentric aspect of our Christian faith, which is not only anthropocentric, from Greek anthropos, man, so not only the man is in the center of our religion, in as regards the human being, but also androcentrism, that means from andros, man, so male, so the male person is in the center of our religion, having a male savior, Jesus Christ, and you know that actually the function of male people, of man in the church, are still very, very forward. So this is also part of that approach and this critique, because it is the male attitude of oppressing or overdoing female persons, conquering the woman, yeah, and that is the similar attitude of male heroism against nature. So conquering nature, overdo nature, oppress nature, exploit nature is a sort of parallel mindset of man as regards to women, as it is a mindset as regards to the earth being a female entity, for example, in the Bible. Yeah, so Eretz, the Hebrew word for earth, is female. So whenever the land, the earth, is mentioned in the Bible, we have actually a female personification, literary personification, and the same is true for Greek, Gaia, Ge, also female. So this attitude oppressing the female has its parallel as regards male behavior to women, machismo, for example, and male behavior to the earth. And that's why there is a feminist theological background in eco-theology, giving the hermeneutics the basic of thinking. So as regards now the Philippines and Asia, part of this environmental network of eco-theologians includes Australia. And so there was in 2015 a big conference of eco-theologians in Australia, which was published as The Nature of Things. And so here now I just name drop some people who are outspoken in eco-theology. There's one Catholic theologian again, Celia Dean Drummond. She is working in Oxford, where the Jesuits run this Laudato Si Research Institute. So when you want to connect with eco-theologians, Google the Laudato Si Research Institute in Oxford. Then there is Paul Sandmeyer, a scholar of disciplines of eco-theology, now retired and living in the Boston area. Bob White, Emeritus Director of the Faraday Institute, which is very interesting. That's in Cambridge. And that Faraday Institute is just dedicated to the dialogue between natural sciences and theology. So when you are interested in that very fascinating dialogue, then you Google the Faraday Institute and the people working there. Then Heather Eaton, professor at the Paul University in Ottawa, Canada. Here you see again that combination of eco-theology and gender, religion, animal studies, and so on. So these hermeneutics of suspicion that actually there is a basic narrative of oppression behind many of our stories is also very important. Then from Australia, Vicky Balabanski, a New Testament scholar located in Adelaide. So for those people in Asia, don't forget Australia, close to you, and people who will join you in your dialogue and your endeavor in eco-theology. Then one of the Australian Catholic theologians in eco-theology that we in Fribourg gave honorary doctor some years ago was Dennis Edwards. Unfortunately, also he passed away in 2019. And one of his very interesting books is about deep incarnation. You see the cover of the book, and this deep incarnation is he was a dogmatic theologian. So now you see already the impact of systematic theology in this eco-theology, because deep incarnation is a term brought up by Niels Erik Gregersen, who is a theologian, a Lutheran theologian in Copenhagen in Denmark, and specialized in patristics also. And he says that deep incarnation is the idea that actually by incarnating the divine word, so Jesus Christ became not only man, not only human, but part of matter. So his body brought up or built up by carbon, by water. So carbon also part of plastic. Yeah. So actually God in incarnating, he puts himself into our matter, and so he becomes part of the evolutionary history of the earth. He becomes part of the same style of molecules and atoms that also lived in dinosaurs, that also live in other forms of life. And that also in the transfiguration after the ascension. So actually this matter is brought into heaven, because Jesus' body was not just recreated, it was transfigurated. So actually the matter that we all live in has been taken up to heaven. And so this, you see, there are very interesting things about rethinking incarnation and ascension in Jesus Christ. Then Bible studies, there we have Norman Habel and the Earth Bible Project. That is a group of people who joined since 2000 in the Society of Biblical Literature annual meetings in the United States, and they have this project where they explore ecological hermeneutics. And Earth Bible applies the hermeneutics of suspicion. That is just a thing that's linked to the feminist hermeneutics. It's built on Ricoeur, Freud, Nietzsche, and Marx, which requires a continuous critical examination of biblical texts and traditions in order to uncover latent, unconscious causes of anthropocentrism. Behind that is the knowledge of biblical scholars that, especially Catholic biblical scholars, Protestants are more reluctant to accept that not every Bible verse is actually good. Yeah, there are toxic Bible verses, yeah, that actually lead to a bad understanding of God wants. Due to Thomistic approach, yeah, Thomas says you cannot just take the word of God as granted for leading your behavior. You need to ask the ethical questions. What is the good thing to do? And then you can look for things from the Bible that can probably perhaps support your insight into the good things to do. And that is a bit the same approach, a similar approach that this Earth Bible project does. Also, Norman Habel himself is a Lutheran too. Then for social ethics, there is one outspoken German scholar, Markus Vogt, with his recent publication von 2021, Christliche Umweltethik, Grundlagen und zentrale Herausforderungen. And for the Philippines, again, there is in Australia Catholic Earth Care, a part of Caritas Australia. The Episcopal Conference in Australia is the only one in the world, in the Catholic world, that has its own office for environmental care. This is a Catholic Earth Care. So they are placed in Sydney. So when you want, and they have a website and so on. So it's maybe worthwhile to be in contact with them too, if you want, because they have actually grassroots programs for, let's say, avoiding plastic, planting more plants, more trees. So they are very for schools, for high schools, for everything, for parishes. So it may be worthwhile to be in contact with them. And then for the liturgy, there is this very big movement now, ecumenical, celebrating the season of creation. It is an ecumenical movement started by the Orthodox, who celebrate on the 1st of September a big Thanksgiving festival and also a sort of supplication feast for the new starting agricultural year that starts in Greece in September. So it's both looking backwards, thankfully, for the harvest of the ending year and asking and begging for a good harvest and a rain and blessing for the agricultural year that starts. And this is pushed out into a new liturgical season, similar to Lent, similar to Advent, which goes until the 4th of October, the feast of St. Francis, who is the patron saint of environmental care. And so you have a lot of possibilities now in liturgy to aware consciousness among normal churchgoers, among school children, for example, to implement a more careful treatment of plastic things in the families, in schools, at home, in our priories, for example. So this is a good idea or a good place to actually train people and change the mindset of peoples in this liturgical season that we are just starting to do. And now, what are the backgrounds for the Pope, for the pontifical teaching? So there's first of all the pontifical Academy of Sciences. That is a very noble community of world-renowned natural scientists who advise the Pope in every questions about nature, about the environment, and they were in the background of him writing Laudato Si, for example. And so, for example, one workshop that the Academy of Sciences and the Academy of Social Sciences jointly made in 2014 was one of the basics of all the natural science parts of Laudato Si in the center of the encyclical. And the first part of the encyclical, and that's against maybe important for the Philippines, has been written, so the outline has been prepared by Sean McDonough, who was a missionary in the Philippines for many years and wrote several books about the still missing awareness of the Catholic Church as regards nature destruction. And especially also he describes in a very heartbreaking manner the decline of nature in the Philippines since the Second World War, for example. And the end of the Second World War, the Philippines were still covered to 2/3 by natural forest, and now this natural forest is almost gone due to Marcos Wayne and the politics of the World Bank. So you see there are still very many things to be addressed as regards environmental care. And another theologian, eco-theologian now, who is in the background of Laudato Si, is Leonardo Boff, who was liberation theologian and then turned also to environmental theologian, for example, with his idea of Earth as Gaia. And he gave the key word of integral theology that is leading through Laudato Si, though the Pope actually took that idea of integral theology, combining care for the poor and care of the earth, from Leonardo Boff. And so you have here the recent texts of the pontifical Inc. We can start with John Paul II, his text Peace with God the Creator, Peace with All Creation from 1990, and then the encyclical Laudato Si in 2015, which is still a bit anthropocentric, then Querida Amazonia from 2020, and now Laudate Deum from 2023. And here I gave you a quotation from Querida Amazonia, number 54, which I find is the most important text, pontifical text on the earth, on the environment, because for the first time a Pope actually says that every life form has an intrinsic value. This is the big part of the text here that you see. In addition, I would observe that each distinctive species has a value in itself. That is the first time that a Pope or a pontifical text says that. And you see how the Catholic Church herself made a huge progress in her environmental attitude. So that was it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Father Steymans, for walking us through the very broad and interesting landscape of Christian eco-theology. The floor is now open for your questions and reactions.
let me just add for the people in Nigeria that Ernst Conradi in South Africa, he is part of an African network of ecotheology, which includes a lot of African theologians. So it might be worthwhile if you want to do a bit more in ecotheology on the African continent to contact him and to see at his homepage what he's offering as possible context in Africa. They have in South Africa an outspoken African approach to ecotheology.
Thank you, Father.
No questions? Go.
Dr. Baibado.
Good morning, Father Ulrich, and thank you very much for that very enlightening lecture. I just want to put your lecture side by side with the presentation of Sir Joel this morning and ask to you directly the question, whether the Laudato Si and then proceeding to Laudato Deum, are we able to get out from anthropocentrism in whatever way it is explained or in whatever form it is, to finally proceed to what Laudato Si would call gospel of creation as a framework of understanding ecology? Or is just entering the back door that no matter how we talk about gospel of creation, in Querida Amazonia, for example, we are actually looking at it still from an anthropocentric narrative or old theological or classical point of view? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, yeah, you see in Querida Amazonia is a first step away from anthropocentrism. In Laudato Si, the Pope still argues a lot in an anthropocentric way. And I think that was due to the aim of that encyclical, which was aimed at the summit in Paris in 2015. The Pope wanted to support Catholic politicians to commit to express a commitment to environmental care at the summit in Paris. And so, of course, he needed to be a bit more in direction of the interests of humans. So that's why it's maybe still a bit anthropocentric. But in Querida Amazonia, you have, as I showed you, 54, this idea of the intrinsic value of every life form, which is already a big step into biocentrism, where the being alive is the ethical background for giving birth to other species, other living forms. And actually, in Querida Amazonia, this is also coming to the fore. Unfortunately, let me say in a sort of parenthesis, the Pope doesn't give the information he is processing to his readers, his readership. Keeps it underground. So you need, in order to get a real glimpse of what he is actually doing and saying, you need to go into the keywords he uses and the things he quotes, and then you find out that actually below the surface of the text, of the letters and words of the text, there is a deep level current flowing, which goes even deeper into eco-theological or environmental questions. And in Querida Amazonia, this comes to the fore to his quotation of "buen vivir." So this is the Portuguese or Spanish term. He quotes quite a lot. He takes it up from the synod that prepared Querida Amazonia, And when you look, when you check Buen Vivir, for example, when you Google Buen Vivir in Google Books, for example, then you find out that Buen Vivir is the key term of uh, the Indios, the indigene people of Colombia and other Andic states and Andic countries. And this is definitely biocentric. So you see, the Pope just doesn't say, so we need to turn to biocentrism. He doesn't say it openly, but by quoting Buen Vivir all the time and making Buen Vivir one of the red threads through his Querida Amazonia, he implicitly changes the direction of Catholic interest away from anthropocentrism to biocentrism as a new ethical foundation for our behavior.
Thank you very much, Father Steymans. We will now give way to a 15-minute health break. But first, a very warm round of applause for our second discussant. To everyone, snacks are served outside. Please be back at 4:10. Thank you.